Welcome back. You're listening to the Mari Mukwanda Show on Salam Media. According to the most recent national survey, 14.2% of primary school children are already overweight, says the Heart and Stroke Foundation of South Africa. If this continues at this rate, 3.9 million school children will be overweight or obese by 2025. Joining me on the line right now is Hayley Cimring, a nutrition team leader rather at the Heart Foundation. She's also a registered dietitian with over 15 years experience in quality nutritional care in the public and private health sector. Good morning, Hayley, and thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Miriam, and thank you for having me, and good morning to your listeners too.
It's a pleasure. All right, so Hayley, why is obesity in children not addressed widely? I find that it's something that is just, left aside because, they're kids and they're still growing and, they will get over it into their adulthood.
Yes, you're quite right about that, and because, as you mentioned with the numbers, and the numbers being so high, specifically in South Africa, it is a very concerning issue. In fact, a South African National Health and Nutrition Exam Survey found that overweight and obesity prevalence is 13.5% in children aged 6 to 14 years, which is higher than the 10% global prevalence in school children. So you can see our numbers are higher than the global numbers, and this is indeed worrying. Another study called the Birth to 20 study was done in Soweto, and this showed that obese children between the ages of 4 and 6 were 42% times more likely to be obese in their teens. And once obesity in childhood is established, it is very difficult to treat. So we should be focusing a lot of our efforts on prevention. It's not impossible to treat, that is the good news. So there are some advice that I can give your listeners on how to treat it, but obviously prevention is key, and we should all be focusing more on this very important topic.
Definitely. And I also noticed that girls are at a higher risk. Why is that?
Yes, well, girls have a different body composition compared to boys, and this is the reason for that. So our body fat distribution, being female, is also concentrated more around the hips, whereas in men they tend to be more lean. So you get different body types called ectomorphs, endomorphs, but females are more likely to be the apple pear-shaped figure and have a higher predominance of gaining weight, especially during the pubertal years when much of the growth and development takes place.
What is the most common cause of childhood obesity?
The causes of childhood obesity, Miriam, are actually very complex. You get the most obvious ones, which are overeating and under-exercising, but there are many other reasons obesity may occur. For example, genetic predisposition, as well as our social and environmental components, and then, of course, poverty, which is often forgotten about. Also, as much as psychological issues can be caused by obesity, they can too lead to obesity. Kids who are stressed, bored, depressed may become emotional eaters, and this will lead to overeating and further worsen the obesity epidemic among children. A very important factor is activity, and while underactivity is also a major contributory factor to childhood obesity, it's worth noting that the WHO organization exercise recommendations are that children in the 5 to 17 year age group should be getting a minimum of 60 minutes of exercise a day. And this should be incorporated into the play and sport of children. And as I mentioned, poverty, it also plays a huge role because energy-dense foods, often high in unhealthy fats, cost less than the healthier, low-energy dense options such as fruits and vegetables and proteins. So this also is a contributing factor. But very importantly, I'd like to just touch on what the health risks are of childhood obesity. And we're seeing more and more now that overweight in childhood and obesity in childhood can lead to type 2 prevalence. This was previously thought of as an adult onset disease, but now we're finding more and more of our children at risk of getting type 2 diabetes. And in addition to this, high blood pressure and high cholesterol, which are both heart disease risk factors, are also appearing. And then on the other side, you also get the psychological and social problems, including discrimination and poor self-esteem that these overweight kids suffer.
Okay, so what can parents do to help their obese children? You did say that earlier that we can reverse it, but also we need to prevent it. So let's start first with the prevention and then move to the reversal.
Yes, okay. So what can parents do if they have an obese child? I think the first point is we as parents need to lead by example because parents are the single biggest influences on their children. So we as parents need to make healthy food choices as often as possible. For example, don't keep high sugar and high fat foods at home. And let your children learn that there are everyday healthy foods, and these should be readily available at the home when possible. A second good idea is packing lunch boxes. So now that children are getting ready to go back to school, packing a lunch box, just making one small swap a week, for example, replacing one unhealthy option with a healthier option, will eventually lead to having a nutritious lunchbox for the child to take to school. For example, you could swap out dried fruit, which is very high in calories and sugar and easy to overconsume, and swap this for a fresh fruit. So by making gradual changes, you eventually have a nutritious lunchbox for the child. The second very important point as a parent is not to use food as a reward. Praise your child when they do make healthy food choices, but it's very important not to use food as a tool to bribe your children or punish them or reward behavior, as this can lead to obviously an unhealthy relationship with food. A third point is to eat at a table together with the whole family. So where possible, sit together as a family and especially avoid eating in front of the TV or computer. As we know, this leads to mindless eating, and this can often lead to overeating. And lastly, I did mention it before, but encourage physical activity because this again is very important in preventing obesity in our children. So encourage your child to take part in sport, and it's really paramount to preventing obesity. So you can see obesity is preventable, and a parent has a role in assisting to prevent obesity of our children.
All right. And from what age should we implement the healthy eating?
Well, actually, it's very interesting fact that I want to share with you is that there are actually two periods in the normal life cycle when your body makes new fat cells. Okay, the first is in the uterus, and the second is at around the age of 6 years old. And this second phase lasts from the age of 6 to puberty. So outside of these periods, our body's existing fat cells are fixed. So we're not producing any more fat cells. They can swell or shrink as we gain or lose fat, but we're not gaining any more body fat cells. So for obese toddlers, the second phase starts before they turn 6, and their bodies make pronouncedly more fat cells than their lean children's bodies. And then the consequence is that obese toddlers become obese adolescents with much more fat cells than the child who started out with a normal weight at 6.
All right, we have a question here from our WhatsApp line. How can you differentiate between a baby fat and childhood obesity?
Yes, thank you for the question. As I said, the distinction is not clear, and there's no specific age cut-off point. But if your child from 6 years old is able to gain more fat cells, then that's the age to watch out for. Because if the child is gaining more fat cells, he's likely to be more obese growing into adulthood. So I think that's the key point, is to be wary of the age of around 6, when children are able of developing extra fat cells.
Okay. And how can parents tell if their child is overweight?
Okay, that's also a very good question. The best way for a parent to actually tell if the child is overweight or obese is by taking your child to a clinic and making sure they go for regular growth monitoring. In South Africa, we have what we use, the Road to Health card, or now it's called a chart or a booklet, and it's used as a growth monitoring chart. And when you take your child to the clinic, they plot the weight for length chart, which shows the child's body weight relative to the length or the height. So you get a graph in the chart book with the heights in centimeters on the horizontal axis and the weight in kilograms on a vertical axis. And you compare this to a medium line, which is a green line in the Road to Health chart booklets. So a child, the nurse will plot the child's weight and height, and a child whose weight for height is above +3, which is a red line on the chart, is considered obese, and a child whose weight for height is above the +2 line, which is an orange line on the chart, is overweight. So I must emphasize that these regular growth monitoring checkups at clinics are very important for parents to be aware of whether their child is overweight or obese. So then they can take the necessary steps to prevent, as we mentioned.
And I think parents don't really take that into consideration too much. We mostly look at the immunizations that they have to get, instead of looking at their weight and their height and anything else that might be important. All right, Hayley.
No, absolutely. Those charts are used for immunizations, but as importantly, they're used to monitor growth and development of the children.
Now, food. What type of food sources and nutrition would be good for kids, and how much should they eat? I know as adults they tell us, you should eat at least 5 small portions a day, etc. But kids, can they eat as much as adults, or not, or should they not be eating that much?
Yes. Well, obviously, kids, depending on their age, need a different amount of calories than adults. So this will be varied. For example, a 2 to 3 year old might need 1,000 calories per day, whereas a 9 to 13 year old will need 16,000 calories per day. So the calories per day is varying depending on the child's age. But what's more important is what the child actually eats. So it's still important for a child as an adult to have three small meals throughout the day with 2 snacks throughout the day. But as I say, the portion sizes will vary depending on the child. And just to emphasize some of the healthier foods, because obviously a child is still growing and developing, and we don't want a child to go on as a diet per se. We want to encourage healthier eating habits. So this would include more of the healthy foods, such as your fruits and vegetables, then other things like beans and lentils, which are high quality carbs and protein and fiber. It's also important to include low fat and fat-free foods, such as milk for the proteins and the minerals. And then when choosing whole grain starchy foods, always go for options like whole wheat bread, brown rice, instead of the refined white cereals. This will help the child feel fuller for longer, and it's also got all the more fiber and nutrients than the highly processed refined products. And lastly, I'd like to emphasize to encourage your child to eat less foods with added sugar, salt, and bad fats. And in fact, according to the World Health Organization, child obesity is increasing, and one of the main reasons it's increasing is there's a global shift in diets towards an intake in very energy-dense foods that are high in fat and sugar, but low in minerals. And also there's easily available sugary drinks and junk food options at schools, and that all contributes to children overindulging in unhealthy food. And I'd like to share with you an interesting fact. A child's sugar intake should be no more than 100 calories from added sugars a day. And what this equates to is 25 grams of sugar, or in layman's terms, less than 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. And it's very easy to get these numbers wrong. A 33 ml can of a gassy cold drink contains an average of 7 teaspoons of added sugar. So already you can see that's above the daily quota.
Wow, those are actually scary figures, because we give these to our kids thinking that no, it's okay, and even if we dilute it in a little bit of water, then it's still going to be okay. But 7 teaspoons of sugar, that is a lot. Now I know my
Yes,
child.
just in one can of cold drink, and children and adult and parents are consuming liters per day, unaware of the excess sugar that they add into their diets, and thus contributing to the overweight and obesity that we find growing and rising both in South Africa and globally.
And the sugar is also becoming addictive too much. How can we say no to them? No, they always just be like, I want sweet, I want this, I want that. How can we say no?
I think, as I've mentioned before, just lead by example as a parent, and have healthy food options available for the child to show them that they can enjoy foods that are good for them but tasty as well. A very useful tip for parents out there is to look out for our endorsement logos, our heart mark and our diabetes SA endorsement logos, which are found in common foods. And these symbols are not a diet. We're not encouraging them as a diet. They're just an indication of a healthier food option. So I encourage all parents to always look out for the heart mark and DSA logos to make healthier food options for them and their children. So it makes shopping easy. You don't have to read complicated food labels. You can buy healthier food options by just looking out for the Heart Mark and DSA logos.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Hayley, and for the information as well. I hope our parents will take heed of the advice and look out for that heart logo, but also make better and healthier choices for them and their kids.
Yes, thank you, Miriam. And also, if I could just, on a last note, if parents do want to find out how to promote a healthy lifestyle and more about healthy living, they can please visit our website, which is at www.heartfoundation.co.za, or follow us on our Facebook, that's at Heartstroke SA, and our Twitter is at SA Heartstroke.
All right. So thank you so much, Hayley, and have a lovely day.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and have a lovely day further too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hayley Cimring, nutritional team leader at the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Childhood obesity, you've seen, you've heard it for yourself. The numbers are shocking, and we do not want to have 3.9 million children, primary school children, obese by 2025. And you think now 2025 is far. It's just 5 years, 5 more years to go, and we'll be in 2025. Imagine 3.9 million school-going kids, primary school-going kids. Your child, my child, could be obese by then, but we can prevent it by buying and implementing healthy food and lifestyle choices in our lives and in their lives as well. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, but it needs to start now, because by the age of 6, that's when the fats will now start to increase, and between those ages they could start becoming obese. But like I said, it is up to you and I. We can put a stop to that. In fact, South Africa is considered as the most unhealthy country in the world. Let that sink in, guys. All right, if you have any further comments, questions, queries, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section or send them to us on WhatsApp. The number is 0617660355. Do stay with us. We will be right back.